Let me paint you a picture: a 21-year-old from Quezon City steps onto the most iconic patch of grass on the planet. 2 weeks later, an entire nation has gone still. Phones down, screens paused, everything on hold, just to watch her play tennis. If you'd floated that idea 12 months before it happened, people wouldn't have argued with you. They would have just laughed, because this isn't how the story is supposed to go for a player from the Philippines. This is a country where the heartbeat of sport lives inside boxing rings and basketball arenas, not on tennis courts. The idea of a homegrown Filipino player even qualifying for a Grand Slam main draw used to feel like someone's daydream, let alone becoming the defining story of the whole tournament. But that is exactly what happened. Her name is Alex Eala, and what she did at Wimbledon in July of 2026 is the kind of run that gets permanently carved into a country's sporting soul. The kind of moment people still bring up a decade later, the same way they talk about a legendary title fight or a buzzer beater that nobody saw coming. So let's walk through it the right way, round by round, because a highlight reel won't cut it here. Every single stage of this run reveals something different about who she actually is. But before the first ball was even struck, where she stood coming in already mattered more than most people realized. Eala arrived at the 2026 championships seated 29th. On the surface, that number might not sound like much, but stop and think about what it actually represented. No Filipino player, man or woman, had ever been seated at a Grand Slam before her. In any other year, that fact alone would have been the headline, a proud line for the papers back home, a footnote in the history books. Instead, it turned out to be nothing more than the opening line of something far bigger. She came into London riding one of the hottest stretches of her career on grass, fresh off winning her second WTA title in Birmingham, then pushing deep into the semifinals in Berlin, where she beat 2 top 10 players back-to-back. That wasn't luck. That wasn't a hot week. That was a player shifting into a completely different gear. And that version of Eala is the one who walked out onto Wimbledon's outer courts for round 1 against Mexico's Renata Zarazua. She took care of business with clean, almost clinical efficiency, barely dropped a game, collected a first-round payday worth north of £80,000. That's somewhere around 6.5 million pesos for a single afternoon, a number that would stop most people dead in their tracks. She was just getting started. Round 2 brought a tougher test in Australia's Eala Wimbledon. This one had real teeth. Eala dropped the opening set, and for a brief moment, the story threatened to end the way so many promising Grand Slam runs do. Quietly, in round 2, buckled by the weight of expectation, she didn't let it. Instead, she turned the match completely on its head and reeled off 12 straight games to close it out, suffocating her opponent so thoroughly there was almost no way back. That result put another check in her pocket, roughly £126,000, more than 10 million pesos. If the whole thing had ended right there, it already would have been a defining Wimbledon for a 29th seed. But then came round 3. And this is the match that turned a good tournament into something that felt genuinely historic. Waiting across the net from her on center court was Iga Swiatek, the reigning champion, world number 3, a 6-time Grand Slam winner who had lifted that exact trophy 12 months earlier in such dominant fashion that she became only the second player in the Open era to win a Slam final without dropping a single game. That is who Eala had to face, on the very court where Swiatek had been crowned the year before. What followed was 2 hours and 14 minutes of tennis that had absolutely no right being that competitive on paper. The first set alone stretched nearly 90 minutes and required a tiebreaker to settle. Eala grabbed it 11 points to 9 after saving breakpoint after breakpoint in a marathon opening game that had the crowd on its feet long before the finish. Swiatek broke early in the second, got a real foothold, looked like she was about to take control of the whole match. Eala broke straight back. From that moment on, she simply refused to give an inch, storming out to a 4-game lead before Swiatek clawed back a couple, and then closing it out anyway, sealing the biggest win of her life. When the final ball landed, she dropped to her knees on center court in tears, because she had just knocked off the defending Wimbledon champion in front of a stunned crowd that had walked in expecting a routine afternoon of tennis. The prize money attached to that particular afternoon was around £185,000, close to 15 million pesos. But by the time that last point was played, genuinely nobody inside that stadium was thinking about money anymore. Every camera, every phone, Every single eye in the building had shifted to the courtside microphone, waiting for her to speak. And what she said in that moment traveled faster and further than any scoreline ever could, still catching her breath, still visibly shaking from the adrenaline. She talked about the legends she grew up idolizing and quietly acknowledged that what she'd just accomplished might look small compared to what a Swiatek or a Serena or a Venus had built over the arc of their careers. But for someone who grew up in the Philippines, she said, it meant something different entirely. Then her voice broke. She couldn't finish the sentence. When the words came back, she talked about training after school every afternoon with her brother and her grandfather, describing herself back then in her own words as a kid in ruffled socks and light-up shoes with chubby cheeks. And she said that image, that memory of the little girl she once was, meant everything to her in that moment standing on center court. It's worth taking a breath here to understand why that clip spread the way it did. There was nothing polished about it. No brand strategy, no PR team, just a young woman who had spent years fighting through junior tournaments and lower-tier pro events, suddenly standing on the most storied court in tennis, connecting the dots out loud, from the little girl who trained on ordinary courts back home to the woman who had just knocked out a defending Grand Slam champion. For a country that had never really had a global tennis star of its own, that moment hit like a wave. Pure, unfiltered, overwhelming pride, rolling through group chats, timelines, and living rooms across the Philippines within minutes. Her grandfather, it's worth saying, wasn't some elite-level coaching mind working behind the scenes. By her own account in past interviews, he was more of a club-level player, someone who simply loved the game, read about it obsessively, watched every match he could. He used those after-school sessions as a way to bond with her, to build a routine, to quietly plant the kind of discipline that never shows up on a stat sheet, but shows up everywhere else, in how a player handles pressure, in how she keeps her composure when a match starts slipping away. Every time she achieves something meaningful, she says she thinks of him, of how hard he worked, of how much he gave up to get her to this point. That's the emotional spine of this entire story. But the tournament didn't stop for sentiment. 2 days later, she was right back out on court for the fourth round, this time against Italy's Jasmine Paolini, the 13th seed, a former Wimbledon finalist, a player built for grass with real pedigree on the surface. And here's where the story demands honesty rather than just triumph. It would be easy to only tell the parts that end in celebration. But the real ending matters just as much as everything before it. Eala fought hard, took the match the full distance, and Paolini closed it out in 3 sets. Just like that, the run was over, one match short of the quarterfinals. Here's what matters about that loss, though. It doesn't take a single thing away to be why reaching the fourth round. Eala had already rewritten the history books, becoming the first player from the Philippines, man or woman, to ever reach the second week of a Grand Slam. The financial reward for getting there was already locked in regardless, roughly £300,000, somewhere in the range of 24 million pesos, stacked on top of every check she'd banked in the rounds before it. Across 4 matches, this single tournament delivered the largest payday of her entire professional career by a wide margin. And alongside the money came something just as valuable, ranking points that lifted her to a new career high in the low 30s in the world. Think about the shape of that for a second. She walked into Wimbledon as the 29th seed and walked out of it a higher-ranked player than when she arrived, despite losing in the 4th round, because the run itself carried that much weight. When she reflected afterward on how she was feeling physically and mentally after the whole stretch, she used a phrase that stuck with a lot of people. She talked about needing to enjoy the process even when it feels like a roller coaster, through the tough stretches, through the uncertainty, and she called that enjoyment her superpower. That tells you something real about how she's wired. Plenty of players chase results and burn out chasing them. She seems genuinely locked into the grind itself, the daily work of getting better, separate from whatever the scoreboard says on any given afternoon. And that's the through line of this whole story, if you pull back far enough. Because this Wimbledon didn't come from nowhere. It was the visible peak of a much longer climb that most casual fans never saw happening beneath the surface. Back in 2022, she won the US Open Junior Girls title, the kind of result that gets you noticed inside the sport but barely registers outside it. Then in 2025, she broke through at the Miami Open, a WTA 1000 event, reaching the semifinals as a wild card and beating 2 top 10 players along the way, becoming the first Filipino player to go that deep at an event of that size, and the first to crack the top 100. She followed that with a run to her first tour-level final in Eastbourne, then claimed her first WTA 125 title in Guadalajara, closing out the season with a career-high ranking around 50th in the world. Along the way, there were injuries, a shoulder problem that disrupted part of her hard court season, losses that never made headlines, the quiet, unglamorous reality of grinding through the tour week after week with no cameras paying attention. All of that groundwork is precisely what made this Wimbledon possible. It wasn't a lightning bolt out of a clear sky. It was years of the exact same discipline her grandfather helped build in her as a kid, compounding slowly and silently until the moment it couldn't be ignored anymore. That's part of what makes her such a compelling athlete to follow. She left home at 13 years old to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, which meant she spent her entire adolescence away from her family, away from the Philippines, chasing something that most people in her exact position would have been quietly told was unrealistic. Building a tennis career out of a country with almost none of the professional infrastructure, coaching pipelines, or tournament access that players from Spain or France or the United States simply take for granted. She made that sacrifice anyway. And somewhere, the 13-year-old version of herself is presumably smiling at what it all built. Yet there's also something worth pausing on in how she talks about her own success publicly. In the aftermath of the Swiatek win, when asked what she hoped young girls would take away from her story, she gently pushed back on the obvious answer. She said it would be an honor to inspire people, but she doesn't want kids growing up wanting to become the next Alex Eala. She wants them to want to become the first version of themselves, to find their own path rather than copy hers. That's a remarkably grounded thing to say for someone who's only 21 and still very much in the early chapters of their own career. And that path, by her own description, isn't paved with trophies and viral moments. It's paved with the parts nobody sees. The early mornings, the sore shoulders, the missed celebrations, the long training days that never make it into a highlight package. She's been direct about crediting a broader cultural work ethic for that mentality, describing Filipinos as people who show up when it counts. A statement that lands very differently coming from someone who has actually backed it up on the biggest stage the sport has to offer. Oh, where does all of this leave her going forward? She's sitting at a career-high ranking in the low 30s. She's proven she can beat top 3 players on the sport's biggest courts. She's proven she can absorb the physical and emotional toll of a deep Grand Slam run without cracking under the pressure. And she is still only 21, which in tennis terms almost certainly means that the version of her who showed up at this Wimbledon is a floor, not a ceiling. There's a broader cultural weight to name here too, because the Philippines has produced global stars before, most famously in boxing, but tennis has never had a figure like this. Someone who can walk into the sport's most prestigious event, beat a defending champion on center court, and turn an entire nation's attention toward a sport it never previously followed. You could watch that ripple effect happen in real time. Public figures back home calling for greater investment in grassroots youth sports. Social media flooding with clips of her on-court interview. Fans who openly admit they know nothing about tennis suddenly finding themselves emotionally invested in whether she wins her next match. That kind of cultural gravity cannot be manufactured by a marketing department. It gets earned, point by point, set by set, on the actual court. Maybe that's the most honest way to close this out. Not with the prize money. Even though the numbers are genuinely staggering for a young athlete from a country where professional tennis infrastructure has historically been thin. Not with the history-making seeding or the fourth-round breakthrough, but with the image of her on her knees on center court in tears, trying to explain to the world what it meant for a kid who trained after school in ruffled socks and light-up shoes, to grow up and beat a 6-time Grand Slam champion on the very lawn where that champion had been crowned queen the year before, because that's the part that doesn't fade once the ranking points get recalculated or the prize money clears. That's the part that gets passed down. The part a whole new generation of kids across the Philippines will grow up hearing about. The day a girl from Quezon City dropped to her knees on the most famous grass in tennis and told an entire country, through tears, that every early morning, every missed birthday, every sacrifice had meant everything. And then, 2 days later, she picked herself back up, took a tough 3-set loss on the chin, and almost immediately started talking about getting back to work. Because if this run has revealed anything real about who Alex Eala actually is, it's that she was never chasing a single tournament. She is building an entire career. And by every indication available right now, she is nowhere close to finished. Her commercial profile has already shifted in ways that will take months to fully measure, but are impossible to miss in the raw numbers. She gained over 1 million new followers in the window around the Swiatek match alone. She's being talked about in rooms that had nothing to do with tennis a month ago. That kind of reach doesn't get engineered, because nothing about this was engineered. A 21-year-old playing the best tennis of her life on the sport's grandest stage produced it entirely on her own, then walked to a microphone and talked about ruffled socks and her grandfather and what it means to represent the Philippines. She even had a phrase stitched into her gear before the tournament began, a Tagalog expression that roughly translates to, "Once it takes root, it cannot be stopped." She chose it for herself before any of this had happened. And things that are genuinely real have a way of building real value that nothing manufactured can ever fake. So when you look at the full prize money breakdown and the digits start blurring into numbers almost too large to hold, here is the simplest, most human way to carry the whole story. A girl from Quezon City grew up walking to the courts after school every day, wearing whatever she had, training because she genuinely loved the game, and for no other reason. She left home at 13 to chase something most people would have told her was completely unrealistic. She spent years grinding through junior circuits and the lower levels of professional tennis, through injuries, through quiet losses, through the weight of representing a country that had never produced a result like this. And now here she is, deep into the second week of Wimbledon, having earned tens of millions of pesos from this tournament alone, with an entire nation celebrating and public figures and former champions recognizing out loud exactly what she has built. She earned every single peso of it. 1 point, 1 set, 1 round at a time, which is really the only way any of this was ever going to happen.